Hello and welcome back, and we are going to cover the next session, next few chapters of nervous conditions by Tsitsi Dangarembga. If you remember, we have already done I think 3 sessions and a very long one, the last one when I did chapter 4 to 6. So we have already done 3 sessions on this book, a background, then the first 3 chapters, and then chapter 4 to 6, and now we are going to have another 2 sessions on chapter 7 and 8, and subsequently chapter 9 and 10. If you haven't yet watched the earlier videos on background and the first few chapters, then this video is going to make less sense, so it's better that you watch that one and then come to this. I hope you are also reading the novel along with following these lectures. So we are going to cover chapters 7 and 8, and the major things that happen in chapters 7 and 8 are that the family along with Tambu, Baba Mukru's family along with Tambu returns to the homestead for the Christmas that year, and then Chido is the one, the son, Nyasha's brother is the one who somehow is able to escape going to the homestead. He's somehow able to avoid going to the homestead. None of them want to go actually. Chido, Nyasha, Tambu, my guru, nobody wants to go, and Chido, the son, is the only one who's able to avoid it. Everyone else along with Baba Mukru goes to the homestead. It would be a good idea to stop in that chapter and just read carefully what are the reasons that each one of them have for not wanting to go to the homestead. So that is the first part. The next important things in these chapter is this whole division that we see, the rest of Sigauke patriarchy, and so everyone who comes for the holiday and everyone who does not have a holiday. For instance, Tambu says that for the women it was not a holiday. So we see here the division of labor. We are very much aware of the 2 separate spheres in which the patriarchy and the ones who do not belong to the patriarchy inhabit within a single household. They inhabit different realms, different spaces even. Right? They sleep in different spaces, they sit in different spaces, like the kitchen and the backyard is for women and the living room is where the patriarchy is. So it is much more pronounced here. We see it much more clearly here. We did not see that in chapter 3 or chapter 4, chapter 3, right? When Baba Mukru had come back from England and the entire family was getting together. At that time we did not see this clearly, but it is much more clearer now. Why is it so? Is it because Tambu, now that she is 14 years old, that she has learnt of things, now that she is aware of all these things with Nyasha, that she is more observant of these distinctions between men and women, and how the imbalance of power. She did not use this word patriarchy earlier on, but she uses it to describe Sigauke and the men and the people who she tells us clearly who are the people who are in the patriarchy. And remember, it is not only the men who are in patriarchy. There are also some women who are in the patriarchy, and we discussed this I think in the background chapter. Who are the women, or rather which is a group of people who are in the patriarchy, who are then get the power of patriarchy, and then who are outside these realms of power. But the important thing is that we see it more clearly now. Tambu is using these words, so it is as if with growth we see that her vision has become much more refined. She can catch these, she can observe these things. She has changed. What was natural for her in chapter 3 is no longer natural. Now she sees the problems of that patriarchal setup. An important scene here is when the patriarchy, right, Baba Mukru, Jeremiah and all the members of the patriarchy take sure about Lucia and the family, and in the kitchen there are women who are unhappy about it, and they are especially Lucia and her sister, and they feel the unfairness. They feel that the family is not being fair. I mean, they are not given a chance to speak, and Tekshor tells the story as he wants to, bad mouthing Lucia, telling tales and so on. So we see this clear distinction. This distinction is becoming clearer and clearer. We see this fight between, or this relationship between Lucia and Tekshor. Lucia is a very interesting character that is who is introduced in chapter 7. So that we have my guru, we have Tambu's mother, we have Tambu, Nyasha, and now we have another very different character, and a very interesting character, and of course Tekshor, who is almost like Jeremiah, Tambu's father. We also see, we will also discuss Jeremiah and Manini's marriage and why Baba Mukru suggests that they should get married. What is Tambu's reaction to Jeremiah and her parents' marriage. And then finally chapter 8 is very interesting because it ends on a very interesting note, because it ends with my guru finally declaring her dissent, right? Declaring her, finding her voice and saying things, putting forth her thoughts. And we see this right from the start of chapter 7, which we are going to read. But now before we go on with all this, let's read a little bit about how the chapter 7 begins. How we see Tambu, who has seen a better household, who has, we see her experiences. In her experiences, we see the results of her upward mobility. She's improving a lot. Remember, she wanted to go to the mission, learn English and improve her lot. And we talked about this, that how this kind of improvement that the education at missionary school, the colonial education, the kind of improvement that colonial education brings, also alienates the self, like Baba Mukru, like Tambu, earlier on like Nahamo, how it alienates them, these characters, from their roots, right? So we literally see her alienation, she is not really happy. She sees the filth and the squalor in her homestead, and we see her mother, how her mother reacts, how her mother sees the difference between the Tambu that went and the Tambu who returns now. She resents her daughter's new, haughty kind of an attitude, and she accuses Tambu of being very judgmental when she comes back and complains about the toilet. So Tambu herself has no idea that she has changed so much, but it is only when all these women get together in the kitchen outside the realms of power that we see that, or Tambu herself sees that she has changed, and she is able to see everyone in a little more detached manner, in a little more clearer manner than she did when she was younger. So let's go and read a little bit about the Christmas at the homestead. So as they are going for Christmas, Baba Mukru, my guru, and everyone, they pack up a lot, they take a lot of stuff, and Tambu, who still feels gratitude and love for her uncle and aunt, mentions that we did not have Father Christmas, but we had Baba Mukru. So despite noticing the way, despite the conflict with Nyasha, the violence that had erupted in towards the end of chapter 6, we still feel Tambu still admires her uncle. We did not have Father Christmas. She at least admires him for his generosity. So my guru, she notices this time, my guru was grumbling that the side of an ox was too much meat, and Baba Mukru and my guru disagree with each other, and this is what Baba Mukru has to say: if I as head of the family don't provide food, who will provide? So he said, do you want Jeremiah to go into the corral and kill an ox when you know I have forbidden him to slaughter those animals? And my guru says, a whole ox would be too much, even a side is too much. But what I object is the way everybody expects me to spend all my time cooking for them. So whose holiday? Remember, we discussed the second point, whose holiday is it? They're all going back for a holiday. But this is what my guru has to say. But what I object to is the way everybody expects me to spend all my time cooking for them. When you provide so much food, then I end up slaving for everybody. She continued obstinately and tried to atone for her obstinacy by sounding tired and weak. That's nothing to worry about. Baba Mukru dismissed her kindly, right? He thinks that this is not important if the family is getting together. She is being unreasonable like that. Here are all these girls to help you. So the job of the girls is to help in the kitchen. You will manage Nyasha, Tambudzai. You see that river, girls. That's where I used to. And then he goes on, starts them showing them scenes of his childhood. Tells them stories about his childhood, and therefore it is dismissed. A woman's work is dismissed, and we see this constantly throughout this chapter about this unending back-breaking nature of woman's work, right? Constant never-ending work that has to be done. And for the first time we see Tambu being aware of it and looking around and seeing the women just working their days at end, and that's why she says that it was not a holiday. Actually, it meant more work for women like my guru, Tambu and Nyasha. So when they get to the homestead, we meet another new character, Lucia, who is a very interesting character. She is Tambu's aunt, her mother's sister, and she has not married, right? She has not married. But what is more interesting is the way the system of Rura has been described. The way the system of Rura has been described in this part of the novel. Now, Rura, as I mentioned in the introductory chapters, it's basically bride price or bride wealth, and somebody, this is the money that the bridegroom has to pay to the family of the bride in order to marry the daughter. So it does not mean that he is buying the bride, but it basically is an acknowledgement for a woman's birth. But why is a woman important? Basically for her labor and her fertility. Now just to go over what the background to Tambu's mother's family. My mother's family was very poor, poorer than my own. At the time that my father took my mother, there was no cattle at all in my grandfather's corral. Because of this, some people had believed it was a blessing that the first two of my maternal grandparents' children were girls. So the family is poor. They don't have any cattle. Cattle is wealth. They don't have any cattle. So why is it that having two girls is a blessing? Otherwise, they reason optimistically. If he had had sons, how would those sons have taken wives? If he had, the oldest was a son, how could the son have gotten married? Because a family does not have money to give the bride price. But now that they have two girls, when these girls get married, the groom's family is going to pay this poor family a bride price. So we see how, although it is not supposed to be buying or selling daughters or women or human beings, but still the money makes the things murky. See, now daughters will bring cattle, right? Daughters will bring cattle. This complete, this direct linkage between daughter and cattle. So once the daughter is given, the groom's family is going to give this family some cattle. So daughters being exchanged for cattle. And it seems that the author Dangarembga wants to show this direct link to us with this sentence. The daughters will bring cattle. The cattle will enable the old man to work his fields. The family will prosper, and when the sons are of an age to marry, by then they will have accumulated their Rura. So, the sons will have the bride price that will come out of the daughter's bride price that has been paid to the family. The wise and the cynical disagreed. Who knows? They dissented. If there had been sons earlier, they would have helped the old man on the land. The family would have been better off than they are now. Besides, they added significantly, a man can't be sure about daughters. So, on the one hand, there is a direct association between daughters and cattle, but again, a man can be sure about the son. It's assumed, despite the fact that we have seen other, like Jeremiah does not really work in the field. It's actually the mother and the daughters. Jeremiah and Nahamo do not work on the fields. Tekshua does not work on the fields. Yet it is assumed that sons would somehow work on the field and bring wealth, whereas daughters you can never be sure of. Daughters are not, women cannot be trusted. Thus the debate continued in my mother's village, way up in the northwest of the country, until my father, visiting a distant relative, saw my mother, impregnated her, and was obliged to take her home with him. It was unfortunate that it happened this way, because under these circumstances, my grandfather could not claim the very high bride price for his daughters. So, because Jeremiah already had her pregnant, so the grandfather is forced to marry the daughter. Now he cannot ask for the bride price. So, it seems to confirm this. A man can't be too sure of the daughters, but actually it is Jeremiah's Jeremiah as well involved in this whole thing. My grandfather could not claim a very high bride price for his daughters, and so my mother's marriage did not improve her family's condition much, right? Not her mother's condition, but mother's family's condition. That was when my grandfather's daughters gained a reputation for being loose women, right? So, not only do they not get the family rich, but they get a reputation of being loose women. At least the elder one did the respectable thing and went with her man, the villagers said, and then they clapped their hands in horror and shook their hands. But look at that Lucia, huh? There is nothing of a woman there. She sleeps with anybody and everybody, but she hasn't born a single child yet. And she's been bewitched. More likely she's a witch herself. Thus poor Lucia was indicted for both her barrenness and her witchery. So, Lucia is just given a bad name, and therefore she is not married. So, not married, the cost of independence or the cost of that freedom from marriage is that she gets a bad name. And then she comes and lives with the sister to help her because of her frequent miscarriages and pregnancies and so on. We hear some more about Lucia here. Although she had been brought up in abject poverty, and she had not, like my mother, been married to it at 15. Her spirit, unfettered in this respect, had experimented with living and drawn its own conclusions. Consequently, she was much bolder woman than my mother and my father, who no longer felt threatened by a woman's boldness, since he had proved his mettle by dispiriting my mother, was excited by the thought of possessing a woman like Lucia. So, this is Tambu's father, Jeremiah, eyeing his sister-in-law Lucia, and he's not intimidated by Lucia's boldness and freedom. So, he was excited by the thought of possessing a woman like Lucia, like possessing a thunderstorm to make it crackle and thunder and lightning at your command. So, he feels that he can also, just as he has dispirited his wife, he can also command Lucia. Lucia had managed somehow to keep herself plump in spite of her tribulations and so on, and she's still pretty, and that's how it goes on. She's strong. She's very strong. She could cultivate a whole acre single-handed without rest, although she was a much more inviting prospect than my mother if you did not scrutinize her past too closely and so on. She's fairly independent. So, we meet Lucia here as soon as they come, and what is interesting in this part of the book is the kind of, as I said, the kind of labor that is expected out of women right from the start. Rambanai is Tambu's youngest sister, who was just a baby when Tambu left. So if she has been in the school for 3 to 4 years, then Rambanai would be 4, 5 or 6 years. But she's already working along with her sisters, Netsai, Tambu, Nyasha, all the women working, all of us except Baba Mukru, right? The man does not carry. So all of us. So who else? Lucia, my guru, Nyasha, Tambu, Rambanai, Netsai, they are the ones who carry the everything that Baba Mukru has brought. They are the ones who carry. All of us except Baba Mukru and including Rambanai. So the older man, the adult man does not carry anything but a 4, 5 or 6 year old girl staggers under weight. She carries loads of luggage and staggers to the house, weighed down by provisions. And all of them, they tease each other, they laugh as if they have accepted that. Her mother is of course ailing, and when Tambu finally goes and talks to her mother, she kind of taunts him for coming to greet her so late. Once again we see this whole hierarchy in the greetings, and how the women and the children and who should greet whom first, which kind of re-establishes the hierarchy, a very patriarchal hierarchy in the household. So as I mentioned earlier on, here we see, and here the way Tambu describes everything, we see the clear division of labor, we see the clear division of spaces between men and women, or rather the privileged and the not privileged. So Nyasha, Netsai, Rambanai and myself, that is Tambu, they are affected as people come in, their sleep arrangements keep getting disturbed, and they start sleeping in the living room, and then finally they end up sleeping in the kitchen, right? They end up sleeping in the kitchen. People, it depends on the patriarchal status, where a person stays, what realm do they move in, whether they work in the kitchen or not. It all depends on the patriarchal status of the person. So in the end, when Baba Munini and Gladys come, the girls are further pushed in, and they are forced to sleep in the kitchen. And here it is where Tambu realizes that it is not really a holiday for them. During the holiday, I realized that some things were not as they should have been in our family, although I call it a holiday when actually it was not. But it is very interesting that now she starts noticing that there were some things which there were some things that were not as they should have been in our family. So there are 4 families at home, 5 if you count Tekshur and Lucia, which made 10 adults. Tete had brought 4 of her youngest children, toddlers and a girl and boy of 7 and 9, as well as a girl to help with the chores. Baba Munini Thomas had 2 boys aged about 5 and 7, so boys are definitely not going to work, but a daughter aged 8, as well as cousin of his wives, who was 16 and lived in my uncle's household to help with the housework. So these are the really working members of the household. Counting Nyasha, Anna, Netsai, Rambanai and myself, there were 24 people together in the homestead, which was 24 stomachs to fill 3 times a day. 24 bodies for which water had to be fetched from Nyamarira daily. So this we did not see in chapter 3 when Baba Mukru comes back. Here now we see Tambu becoming conscious of these things. 24 people's laundry to wash as often as possible, and Tete's youngest was still in napkins. Now this kind of work was women's work. And of the 13 women there, my mother and Lucia were incapacitated a little. Why? Because they are pregnant. But nevertheless, to some extent by pregnancy, Tete having patriarchal status. Why does Tete have patriarchal status? Because she is from the father's side of family. She is Baba Mukru's sister, and Baba Mukru, Jeremiah and Baba Munini's sister. So Tete, having patriarchal status, was not expected to do much, and 4 of us were only 10-year-old or younger. So my guru, Nyasha, and the 3 helping girls and myself were on feet all day. And then she goes on. The mornings began with the early began early with heating water for adults to wash. We did not have enamel basins. We needed 10 and we only had 2, so they had to refill the basins and empty. Dinner could not be eaten until people had washed the sleep away. So by the time the fires had been lit, the water heated and the adults clean, it was past 10 o'clock. Then begins the bread, hunks of bread cut thick, spread with margarine and so on. It is no longer what she had in my guru's kitchen. But they go on. My guru, Anna, and my aunts, everyone, as soon as the breakfast finishes, they start preparing for the lunch. While the adults ate their breakfast, we gathered the children together to feed them. And sometimes we managed to snatch a bite while the children were eating. But more often, what with making sure that no one went hungry, our breakfast had to wait until everyone else had finished, and we had set Netsai and little cousins to washing up in the enamel basins by the Dara. So then they sweep, they clean the toilets, they go for the washing, and then they come and start preparing for the dinner. So it is a very busy, although there are some moments of fun like going to the river and so on. But here we see my guru, the complaint that she had made, when they carry so much food, then she has to spend all her time slaving in the kitchen. That is really happening. So not only is she slaving, but Tambu, Nyasha, Anna, everyone just is just slaving in the kitchen. So my guru worked harder than everybody else because as senior wife and owner of the best cooking facilities as well as provider of the food to cook, she was expected to oversee all culinary operations. It was ceaseless work, unwise to delegate, because she had to make sure that the food lasted until the end of the vacation. So the meat is not eaten, and as she tries to save the meat starts rotting, people start fighting. So it's not an easy and definitely not a pleasant job. So it is no wonder that my guru does not want to come. At least in her household she has accepted her subservient status, but she's comfortable. Here it is tireless, back-breaking work for the whole day. And it is interesting because it is all supposed to be a holiday and it's all supposed to be a woman's work. So as we said, the patriarchy, the holiday, the idea of holiday, back-breaking, slave-like work. So this is the setup, this is the way holidays are, this is the setup at the homestead during the Christmas. This is where we see the parallel scenes, and we see the different spaces in the house, in the power structure, the different spaces that are inhabited by men and women, by the advantage and the disadvantage. And though not so stark, it was still there if you remember in Baba Mukru's household also. Remember, the kitchen is little slovenly, old, broken, but the living room, the facade that they put up for the visitors is perfect, is impressive. But the woman's domain, right, who spends the most time in kitchen? The woman's area, that is slovenly, old, broken, dirty. So which in a way reflects the status of the person who spends time in that area, that is the kitchen. We also see in this part that there is some kind of tension amongst women, so that does not allow them to come together. So my guru is a little wary of Lucia. Tambu's mother, Mashingai, is and Lucia especially, they think that my guru thinks she is better than the rest of us, and then therefore because she has been educated, and so they there is a certain kind of tension. And Tambu is accused, her mother Mashingai accuses Tambu of acquiring this superior attitude from her because she's come from with my guru. You know, she has that superior attitude has rubbed off her. Now let's read a little bit about this parallel scenes of Sigauke patriarchy and the women in the kitchen, and about Lucia and Texture in that particular scene. So here we see, here she's still talking about good woman, but my guru being good woman and a good wife, and took pride in this identity. And she took to cooking twice a day, a preferred pot. So the more good you become, the more of rest you are. She took to cooking twice a day, a special pot of refrigerator meat for patriarchy to eat as a plan, and constructed the family's future, right? Women cooking and the patriarchy and doing all the work, and the patriarchy sitting and constructing the family's future. Okay. So over in one of those evenings, there is this meeting, a kind of a family meeting, consisted, everyone in the patriarchy, the three brothers who were Baba Mukru, my brother, and Baba Munini Thomas, and their sister and the male accused, that is Teksha. So they are all going to sit together to talk about this whole affair of Teksha and Lucia. So, and it is interesting, as I mentioned earlier, that Tambu is using the word patriarchy to describe this set of people, which shows that she has grown up and she is more observant. And Baba Mukru asks Jeremiah and Teksha about Lucia, her condition, and why are things like that, when he had told them that Lucia should go and Teksha should also go. And the entire family is discussing that, and Teksha passes the blame, of course, to Lucia. I would have gone, Mukoma. So Baba Mukru said that he had asked him to leave. So he says, I would have gone, but Lucia refused. She refused to leave her sister. And Teksha, when he asked, why did you not inform me of Lucia's stubbornness, Teksha hung his head. And as this is happening in the living room, back in the kitchen, all the women are hearing it and getting agitated, right? And this is kind of an alternate system. This is a woman's world. Of course, no power, no voice, but yet they are getting agitated by it. So we have here, we have Lucia, right? Ma Shingai, the Tambu's sister, Tambu's mother, who is very upset that her sister is being accused of all the wrongdoings. Have you ever seen it happen? She waxed ferociously and eloquently that a hearing is conducted in the absence of the accused. Aren't they saying that my young sister impregnated herself on purpose? Isn't that what Teksha will tell them, and they will believe it? They are accusing Lucia. She should be there to defend herself. And Patience, Manini Patience, who's Baba Munini Thomas, his wife, she says she agrees. She agrees, and Tambu says that despite being married for 8 years, she had enough identity left not to feel dishonest to Baba Munini Thomas for agreeing with my mother. So, although she is married, she is still loyal to her husband, yet she has a mind of her own. She has still some identity and some independence left in her, something that we have not yet seen in my guru. And Lucia is really angry. My mother and my aunts fanning each other's temper. The women are getting really angry. My guru is of course silent. And this is what Lucia says, it's all right for you. They are not telling lies about you. It's not your name they are spoiling. I am the one they are talking about. I am the one they are judging up there, isn't it, my guru? She asked to draw my guru into the fierce sisterly solidarity they had established there in the kitchen. So there is some kind of solidarity coming in amongst the women. They are sisters and their mothers. So there is some kind of a solidarity that is growing. My guru is not yet a part of that solidarity. And this is what Tambu observes. It was embarrassing the way Lucia wouldn't give up on my guru. My guru, who thought that Lucia ought to suffer the consequences of her fecund appetites, perhaps felt sorry for her too, but preferred all the same not to become involved in the matters of flesh or earth, although she did not like this preference to be too obvious, since it meant she was setting herself above the rest of us. She chooses to be silent. She does not want to get involved in this tussle, right? She does not want to get involved in this tussle, and she feels that Lucia is at fault somehow. But now Lucia is kind of provoking my guru to take a side. You cannot sit on the fence anymore. Either you are with the patriarchy or you're not with the patriarchy. So Lucia prods on my guru, and my guru does not really say anything. And here is what Tambu tells. What was needed in that kitchen was a combination of my guru's detachment and Lucia's direction. So the two women have something that makes them valuable: my guru's detachment and Lucia's direction. Everybody needed to broaden out a little, to stop and consider the alternatives, but the matter was too intimate. It sung too saltily, too sharply and agonizingly the sensitive images that women had of themselves, the images that were really no more than reflections. So when the patriarchy is not able to resolve this problem, and Lucia takes over and shows mirror to Jeremiah and Tiksha, the family sits down and wonders what is wrong, right? What is the bad luck that has inflicted Jeremiah and his family? Why are the conditions not improving? Why are they still poor? And instead of taking Jeremiah and Tiksha to task for being lazy and not working, Jeremiah suggests that there is some kind of they come to a conclusion that there is some kind of a bad or unlucky influence, or some kind of a bad influence that has inflicted the family. So instead of telling the men to work, they start finding solutions in that direction, and Jeremiah's suggestion is that they find a good medium, they conduct a ceremony, sacrifice a bear, an ox and everything, and get rid of this evil influence that is keeping him poor. Baba Mukru is, of course, he is educated, right? He is enlightened, and he cannot accept this relic, this old way of thinking, this backward superstitious way of thinking. So what does he think? That's enough, Baba Mukru interrupted. What Jeremiah is saying cannot be done. I will not discuss it. But I have one thing I want to tell you. I do not think I have not been considering these. And what does Baba Mukru suggest? That Jeremiah and Mashingai, Tambu's mother, have not been married in a Christian fashion. And that's why the household is not blessed. And so, once they are married in a Christian fashion, the household is going to be the sway of bad luck can be done away with, right? Only by the blessing of God, by Christian marriage, can this bad luck be done away with. You have to think, what is it so different? Jeremiah says, let's get a medium, conduct a ceremony, and do away with the bad evil. Here he says, no, I think it is your marriage, let's get you married. So it's like substituting one ceremony for the other, but with this whole discourse of Christianity which Baba Mukru has learned at the mission school and at the church amongst the whites. So that is his ridiculous suggestion that Mashingai and Jeremiah get married again instead of performing a ceremony. And this is what Tambu tells Nyasha, and Nyasha is very much amused by this, right? She's amused because she's curious about cleansing ceremony. So, and it is clear that her father has actually substituted one ceremony for another. His father's, if Jeremiah's way of thinking is about African superstitions, then Baba Mukru's way of thinking is about Christian superstitions, right? When Tambu tries to tell this to Nyasha, Christian and Baba Mukru, a Christian wedding sounds better than a cleansing ceremony. When I confronted Nyasha with this evidence of nature of progress, right, from cleansing ceremony to a Christian marriage, she became quite annoyed and delivered a lecture on the dangers of assuming that Christian ways were progressive ways. It's bad enough, she said severely, when a country gets colonized, but when the people do as well, that's the end, really that's the end. And that was the end of the debate too. So Nyasha recognizes in a way that Baba Mukru is a colonized subject, right? Baba Mukru is somebody who has embraced colonization and has become a tool of further colonizing his family, children, and so on. So he's a very tameable colonized subject, and that's where his solution is coming from, as Nyasha recognizes. So we have discussed these points mostly. We just need to now go over the last part, that is my Guru's decision to leave the household, and that happens towards the end of chapter 8. Now chapter 8 is spent on most of it is spent on the preparations of Mashingai's and Jeremiah's marriage. Tambu's mother has in a way kind of given up, right? She has her lot is, there's so much suffering, tiredness, that she does not really care about all these things. Her father is of course excited about whatever my Baba Mukru says. Tambu resents it a little bit, but we do not see the full extent of her resentment till the morning of the wedding. And of course the other members, we see Baba Mukru, Nyasha and all just got in the preparations, getting dresses and so on. But just to wind up this point about Lucia and texture in this chapter, so the very outspoken woman, and men consider her rude for standing up for herself. She bosses around lazy texture and claims that her sister needs protection against Jeremiah, who is often abusive, who has a roving eye, and above all who is lazy. Because of her outbursts and her straightforward nature, Lucia is labeled a witch. Ultimately, this section of the novel in a way addresses the deep-seated gender inequality in 1960s Rhodesia. They are both men and women who believe deeply in the system of patriarchy. Remember, patriarchy is not just about men. There are women who are a part of patriarchy here, like Tete Gladys, right? So they are part of the patriarchy. The men silence their female counterparts, and some of the women believe that they should be silenced. My Guru sits on the fence, does not want to take, because self-preservation, right? She doesn't want her family to be disturbed by what's going on here. However, it is women like Nyasha, Lucia, and as we see in chapter 8, to some extent my Guru, who are attempting to make some strides, who are attempting to bring about some changes. Now let's go back and read about Tambu's reaction. So Tambu's little instance, a little moment of rebellion where she she has been full of love and gratitude for the uncle, but here she takes a little bit of stance against the uncle, and that's where she realizes, we see her realizing, we see her growth, we see her observing this whole notion of gratitude, being a goodness, being a good girl, and so on. So as she says, Baba Mukrushi, even when they start preparing, she does not like the idea that they are that her parents are going to get married. This also began to happen whenever I thought of Baba Mukru and put me in a difficult situation. Naturally, I was angry with him for having devised this plot which made such a joke of my parents, my home, and myself. It questions her legitimacy, right? So she does not like that. And just as naturally, I could not be angry with him, since surely it was sinful to be angry with Baba Mukru. You cannot be. He is a great God. He is a great benefactor. My father, for all practical purposes, who was also good, deserving of all love, respect, and obedience. And so she tries to banish the anger, and tries to get mixed with the wedding preparations. This is also the time when Tambu's mother has a baby, right? And yet Lucia comes and gets a job at the mission. Tambu's mother cannot make that break, right? She cannot take charge of her life like that, since for most of her life my mother's mind, belonging first to her father and then to her husband, had not been hers to make up. She was finding it difficult to come to a decision, and so Lucia is the one who comes. So Lucia wants her to join, but the mother is not able to take that final step of leaving the homestead, leaving her lazy husband, but Lucia does. Lucia comes and takes a job at the mission. It's interesting to see this scene after Lucia gets a job, right? The way everyone worships Baba Mukru. So Tambu's mother, Lucia, my guru, right? My guru is also supposed to thank. It was an intoxicating occasion. My first instinct was to join the adoring women, all these 3 adoring women sitting, kneeling down on the floor before Baba Mukru. And but Tambu also feels that kind of gratitude before Nyasha stops her from kneeling down. This is what for her, for Tambu, it is mesmerizing. The way the sleight of hand that had lifted Lucia out of her misery, and even more seductive was the power that this sleight of hand represented. With the crescendos of praise, Baba Mukru grew modest and egalitarian. So the power that Baba Mukru has to just change and shape Lucia's fate, that is what impresses Tambu. But we must question, where is that coming from? Where is that power coming from? From him being a man, from him being a colonized man who has accepted colonization and therefore been given this position where he has some position in the colonized African society, colonized Rhodesian society, but this is the extent of her power. Remember that they like the obedient black men and black boys. So Baba Mukru is one of those obedient black boys, and that's the source of his power, being colonized. According to Nyasha, it should not be. There is nothing great that Baba Mukru has done. This is the way the people in power should. It was obligation of all decent people in position like Baba Mukru's to do such things. There is not this. He should be doing these things. But of course, Tambu does not agree yet. So on the morning of the wedding, Tambu goes into kind of a stupor. She does not wake up. She does not want to. And for a moment, we see her act of rebellion in this resistance to get up and go to the homestead. And in that moment, she is able to achieve that detachment and see the things that Nyasha often has been talking about. My vagueness and my reverence for my uncle, what he was, what he had achieved and what he represented, and therefore what he wanted, and had stunted the growth of my faculty of criticism, sapped the energy that in childhood I had used to define my own position. So, in childhood she could see the unfairness of Nahamo being selected for education. Compare this Tambu who is trying to be a good girl to the Tambu who had told her father that she would earn money for her education, the little girl. So, she is in her gratitude for her uncle, in her want to improve her lot. She is also going the way Baba Mukru went, to become a colonized subject and also to become a patriarchalized girl, right? Be a good girl. So, and whenever there is the favorable comparisons with Nyasha doing a lot of the damage. So, whenever she is compared with Nyasha and told that, Nyasha is rebellious and this one is a good girl, she wants to be an even better girl, and being good girl is being amenable, being obedient, not really questioning the authority, whether it is of the teacher, the colonizer, or within the family of the father figure, the patriarch. So, in becoming a good girl, she has bidden adieu. She has lost the faculty for critical and independent thinking that she had in her childhood, and for that moment she, in her resistance to going to her parents' wedding, she recognizes these, she attains the detachment to see all this. Baba Mukru of course reacts in the way that he is expected to. He is an authoritarian. He feels that Tambu is not being grateful. She is growing into a bad child. So, within a moment from a good girl to a bad girl, just one moment of resistance, one moment of disobedience, and she is labeled a bad girl. She is growing into a bad child. I am spoiling her here. She knows she is in my house not because of herself, but because of my kindness and generosity. So, like the self-congratulatory tone that I am kind and I am generous, and she is living off my kindness and my generosity, something that his daughter would not agree absolutely, because remember what she says, that it is obligation of the people in position of good position to help those who are not. It is a natural thing. But Baba Mukru clearly does not believe that. For him, if he is being generous, then other people have to submit to, other person has to submit to his power. So, again, I am the head, just as he had shouted at Nyasha, I am the head of the house. Anyone who defies my authority is an evil thing in this house. So, anyone who defies my authority is evil, bent on destroying what I have made. What has he made? A good, traditional, anglicized African household, where he remains the head of the house, where he is the one who is going to shape everyone's destiny, and everyone obeys this colonized patriarch kind of a figure. And in that resistance, that passive, I will not go. But I had not seen them before I had made my decision. So, she sees the photographs of the wedding, and this is what she says. But I had not seen them. She might have gone after seeing the photographs, that's what she says. But in deciding not to go, that decision at least was mine, right? That was an independent decision. That was a decision taken in resistance against everyone. It was her decision that she had taken. And once Tambu has taken a stance, and then once Tambu has taken a stance, once Lucia is independent and Lucia has its attitude, this independent attitude which Baba Mukru admires, and something that offends my Guru, that we see my Guru herself now taking a stand against Baba Mukru. Remember that my Guru works in the mission, but she does not get her salary. Her salary goes to Baba Mukru, the headmaster, her husband, and it is used by him to help his household. It's used by him to help Jeremiah and his family. And if you remember earlier on, we discussed this in chapter 6, that Tambu really feels sorry about this, to earn your own money but not to have any control over it. She feels that this is a very sad, this is not a very favorable situation that my Guru is in. And so eventually eventually my guru decides to uh, walk out, right? She decides to tackle the issue directly. This is when Tambu is being punished, and Lucia comes to defend her for not going to the wedding. And my guru is kind of, she does not like Lucia's attitude and the way she talks independently to Baba Mukru, and Baba Mukru admires her for that. So my guru tells Baba Mukru to stop punishing Tambu. After all, Nahamu died in the house, and what will her parents think when she tells them how she was treated? And she says, Baba Mukru says, Tambudza is my brother's daughter. I am a father. I have a right to discipline her. It's my duty. And then my guru seems to just let it go. She seems to lose it. She just lets everything go. My guru said a lot of things then. Yes, she is your brother's daughter, she said, but when it comes to taking my money so that you can feed her and her father and your whole family and waste it on ridiculous weddings, that's when they are my relatives too, right? The wastage of money. Remember how the dresses which my guru keeps on avoiding buying the clothes and the fabric for till the end. Now we know why she was avoiding it. So spending my money on feeding her father or whole family and waste it on ridiculous wedding, that's when they are my relatives too. Let me tell you, Baba Chido, I'm tired of my house being a hotel for your family. I'm tired of being a housekeeper for them. I'm tired of being nothing in a home. I'm working myself sick to support. And now even that Lucia can walk in here and tell me that the things she discusses with you here in my home are none of my business, and so on. And then they start quarreling. And Baba Mukru, of course, tries to pacify her that it's not the right words. Nyasha is, of course, quite interested. She was shaken, so was I. We had not heard Baba Mukru and my guru quarrel before. She says they are not good words. Baba Mukru says they are not good words, and she agrees they are not. But if they are not good things to be said, then neither are the good things to happen. So neither are the good things to happen, but they are happening here in my home. It is as I say, when I keep quiet, you think I'm enjoying it. So today I'm telling you that I'm not happy. I'm not happy anymore in this house. And Baba Mukru snaps, go where you will be happy. And my guru in a way walks out. And Nyasha, although she's a little unhappy and has some misgivings about the mother walking out and not staying back for her, as Tambu would think, Nyasha is okay. Nyasha accepts that. She accepts that her mother has left. So I thought Nyasha was a little unbalanced, not to be distressed by being abandoned so abruptly. That this is what Tambu thinks, that Nyasha would be upset that her mother had abandoned her. But Nyasha, she did not think of her mother. She did not think her mother had deserted her. She thought there was a difference between people deserting their daughters and people saving themselves. My guru was doing the latter and would be available for her daughter when she was needed. We'll survive, we'll manage somehow. So my guru leaves and she's happy. And sometimes I feel I'm trapped by that man just like she is. She's talking about the father, Baba Mukru. But now she's done it. Now she's broken out. I know it's possible, so I can wait, right? So in a way, my guru's walking out has shown a way to younger girls like Nyasha to be independent, to take a stance. But Nyasha is very upset later on when she learns that my guru has gone nowhere but to her brother's house, and that's what upsets her, because she goes, a man, she always runs to men. There is no hope, Tambu, really there isn't. And eventually my guru comes back, but we see that there is a subtle change in Baba Mukru's and my guru's relationship. And she's no longer the worshipping woman. She's no longer the woman who would hold out the dishes for him. She counters him, she challenges him, and she often tells him what she thinks her thoughts, which might be very different from his thoughts. So that's where we end chapter 8. So we have covered these points. We have seen various division. Gender has been an important issue in as earlier, and I think that it is an intersection between colonialism and gender that is responsible for the oppression of women in this kind of a society, where patriarchy and colonialism collude, they come together to oppress those who are poor, women, and so on. So there is a kind of an intersectionality of power which is oppressive. We see various women in this particular section of the book tackling that or taking a stance against that kind of patriarchy powered by colonialism. We see Lucia taking a stance against texture, taking a stance for her sister, speaking up against Jeremiah, and then finally finding a job and finding independence. Margaru also walks out. Although she returns, we see that there is a certain change in the power balance of her marriage. And of course, Tambu puts up a little resistance, her own little resistance, in a very passive aggressive kind of a resistance, and refusing to go to her parents' wedding. And as she says that whatever it might make a difference or not make a difference, and it punished her, but at least she was punished, but she does not mind, because at least that decision was hers, not out of gratitude, not because she should be a good girl, but just because what she did not like and she did not appreciate. So in a way she stood out, or she kind of resisted getting up that day for what she wanted, what she thought, what she believed was not right. So with that we come to an end to this session. Next session we would finish the book. Please go over it carefully. Please read the book. It is important to read the book to understand it fully, and it would be a good idea to watch all these lectures one at a time in their entirety to make more sense of this lesson. So thank you very much. And if you want me to do any particular book, this is for everyone. If you want me to do any particular book in this manner, in detail, you must write and let me know. We can cover up, and you can subscribe, you can so that you get the updates about which book I am going to do. And if you want me to do certain book, I would definitely try and do that. Thank you.